I mentioned a little while ago that I had gotten an email from a brother who formerly worked with McKinsey and Company, and who essentially said that having read my work, particularly the second edition of the Buying Power book, which focuses a little bit on McKinsey, that between that and some other things, he felt it was need to there. He felt a need to resign and write a little statement, a small report to McKinsey to explain why he was leaving. And he shared that with me. And I think that it is just worthy of looking at a little bit here. So having had a chance to actually finally get to look at it, I thought we would start there, and then go to the big cigar, and then to the United Front Against Fascism. This will be relatively short. So this is the report that he sent to McKinsey on his way out. I'll leave out, well, just for the sake of time, he just basically said that he worked with the Black Economic Mobility Group, which I've been critical of in terms of some of its reporting coming out of McKinsey, and says here that the conversations were geared towards selling this information to our clients, driving more work for McKinsey, and of course, nominally improving the conditions of Black people. So saying, he came out of an HBCU, had no real previous knowledge of the firm, joined the Black Economic Mobility team thinking he was going to have a positive impact on the Black community, and then realized over time that was just not a possibility. As he says here, citing some of my work, and I think even doing some things better to make the point, as I'll show you in a moment, he just goes through some of the numbers. Black workers are concentrated in low-wage jobs, and he says, and that McKinsey knows this by the Institute's own account, and in 2022, the median Black family had $15 for every $100 of a white family. Why then is the notion of buying power touted as an untapped resource by the Institute? And I think more than just the Institute, we should be asking this question of Black targeting media outlets, whether they are Black or owned or not. More people should be asking what exactly, or why exactly, are people, Black targeting outlets, being willing to tout this number, and when it's understood that this is it's incomplete at best. In fact, just given here this one statistic, if Black people have $15 for every 100 of the white family, why then are we touting this? And then why are Black owned and targeting media outlets doing the same? But as the author as he notes here, other places such as Nielsen IQ, which is the updated version of the Nielsen report, the data, the number to be is, with their number being 1.3 trillion, they do this with non-publicly available analysis. This was my argument around all of them, including the Selig Center. Their reports are not made public. You have to spend money, and then when you do spend the money and read the reports, they don't have any explanation for how they reach this number. And Selig says itself that they're doing it based on estimates and projections. Those are the words they use. The data the Institute, meaning McKinsey, cited is from the BLS, or Bureau of Labor Statistics, consumer expenditure surveys, and the calculation that the Institute used to get this approximate number is not publicly available either. Made that point myself. How are you all reaching these numbers? And when I reached out to the BLS themselves, they responded by saying, A, as we'll come back to in a moment, we don't account for credit card expenditures in our numbers, and B, our numbers are not to be used to interpret the income, wealth, or economic condition of the Black community. That's not what these particular numbers are for. Let's investigate the buying power metric. In 2019, there were 47 million Black people in the US, and the median annual income for Black households was $46,000. The average household in the US, 2.63 persons in 2018. 17,870,000 households times 46,000 is roughly $822 billion. This means the median or typical Black household would have to spend more than what they make for this number to make sense. So in my argument, initially, it was that all the way that the numbers look to be calculated, Black people would have to spend every penny they earn. This is showing Black people would have to spend even more than they earn for this number of buying power to make sense. Also, the calculations for the institute used include the debt people are utilizing to make purchases, making this number even more unrealistic. So again, I'm not sure how they did that because the BLS does not use that. And yet McKinsey uses the BLS, but the BLS states data users may notice that average annual expenditures presented in the income table sometimes exceed income before taxes for the lower income groups. Consumer units whose numbers experience a spell of unemployment may draw on their savings to maintain their expenditures. Self-employed consumers may experience business losses that result in lower, even negative incomes, but are able to maintain their expenditures by borrowing or relying on savings. Students may be on loans while they are in school, and retirees may rely on drawing down savings and investments. So the BLS is saying, the numbers may look different because people are spending more than they make and they're spending from other areas. So you wouldn't argue that a self-employed business owner experiencing a downturn and making less through sales revenue, but who uses savings to continue spending is somehow exercising some economic strength. I think this is something this is a point I could have, and maybe in future work would hit even harder. Because that's I don't think I made this point in my work clear enough. But this is an excellent reminder that, again, these numbers are not, they come from nothing. They're not publicly available analysis. They're not derived from publicly available analysis, and then they're wildly misleading. Buying power cannot be measured based on the wealth that Black consumers build for white corporations. And yet that's what it is. That's what it's a measurement of. And then just continuing a little more, beneath the sobering realities, however, is a market with substantial buying power and influence and plenty upside for the future. So what the author is showing here is that while the McKinsey reports and other reports, and again, as I argued from the beginning of my whole interest in this subject, you hear these wild numbers and horrific, you hear about the horrific conditions of Black people economically, but then you start being presented with these numbers suggesting that there's some power and influence but there's no, it just doesn't make any sense. And yet it's marketed this way through the reports that are then used to help businesses and ad companies market or target their revenue, their ad revenue. And then the Black press picks this up and it's reported to Black consumers that of that media that they're doing better than they actually are. Additionally, the survey indicated that consumers would pay 20% more on average for tailored products, which gives them 300. So when McKinsey was talking about remember, I even covered this report where McKinsey was talking about the $300 billion as an opportunity that the corporate world would benefit from were they to target Black consumers or Black media outlets with their marketing. So when they note here that Black people would be willing to pay 20% more on average for tailored products, that's how they reach this. So not only would Black people spend money they do not have to reach the buying power number, they would also pay 20% more just for a tailored experience. This conveys mixed messaging. It's not mixed messaging in the sense that it's giving the one message it's meant to give, that Black people are doing better than they actually are. It's mixed messaging only if your intent is to truly understand what the actual condition of Black or any other group in the economy is. They mentioned selling the Negro and how that documentary, which I've covered a number of times, we talked about a lot here, has helped in advancing the mythology, in unlocking the full potential in fashion for Black consumers. That's one of the other reports that came out of the Black Economic Mobility Institute within McKinsey, out of which this person comes. By the way, if I didn't make that point clearly enough, I think I don't. Let me make it now. So these are all reports. Most of them, I think all of them, we've covered here at one point or another. But in this report, one of the suggestions for fashion brands to sell themselves and attract more Black consumers was to offer flexible payment methods such as buy now, pay later, stating that research shows that Black consumers already use BNPL solutions at higher rates than the US population as a whole. Of course, all this does is cost them more for the products they're buying, and helps corporations sell more. And as it's described here, it's predatory. Even more incriminating that the Institute knowingly proposed this nefarious solution, as the article cited in the excerpt above is titled, "Buy Now, Pay Later, Users Significantly More Likely to Overdraft Than Non-Users." So in their own reports, they're saying Black people are more likely to, anyone who uses buy now, pay later is more likely to overdraft, take long, and yet they're saying that this is what will help drive that buying power. BNPL companies like Affirm, Klarna, et cetera, give out 0% interest loans that can be paid back in various periods, 3, 6, 12 months. They make their money by taking a cut of the sales. What makes them attractive to companies is that the customers who use BNPL have bigger cart sizes. They are likely to spend 20% more. So if you can pay over time, and especially if you're being given a no interest loan, they just want to move the products. So the companies that push this get a cut of the sales. The corporations are willing to have a cut of their sales taken because overall they sell more, up to 20% more, because if you're able to spend what you don't have and pay it off over time with no interest, you're likely to buy more. The author also points out, is one of the points that I've made that I would like to make even better, or could have made even better, is that the work of, as he points out, Sandy Darity and Derek Hamilton are seldom cited or mentioned in these reports. And that's something that I did mention in my work, but I think would be better to be made more clear. That one of the arguments, or one of the points I've been trying to make, is that the actual economists doing this work are not cited by the press, particularly the Black press, that often is using these reports, McKinsey, Nielsen, and Selig, to tell Black audiences that their economic condition is better off than it is. In fact, there's a section of my book where I show that while Hamilton is producing reports about the actual condition of the Black community, those reports are ignored, and the Black press of that moment is touting, is busy touting these numbers about buying power. So as the author here reminds, McKinsey has operated in the interest of their clients, not society. The first instance, I researched disparities within financial institutes and presented to the leadership that banks were closing their physical branches at staggering rates in Black majority communities. Still, one bank superseded them all, but I was told to keep their name out of the deck because it was a client of McKinsey and they wanted to preserve the relationship. So again, to the extent that the Black press is following McKinsey's journalism, so to speak, the Black press is itself unaware or unwilling or unable to report on the actual economic occurrences, including the closing of banks, while we're being told we're underbanked and we need to have do more with banking. Banks are closing and it can't even be shared, or it can't even be reported, at least in terms of this McKinsey, in terms of McKinsey doing it. He talks about the hypocrisy and the abuse of Dr. King, producing promotional materials around Dr. King and financial literacy when King listed the evils of society as racism, materialism, and militarism. When a company is explicitly involved with consulting two of the three evils and exhibiting internal racism through the mistreatment of Black colleagues, it makes one wonder if a seat at the table is worth it if the table is supported by forms of injustice. So you're out here, McKinsey's out here serving materialists, capitalist and military industrial complex industries while claiming to be representing Dr. King and solving the conditions that King sought to address. What if Black people are looking for wholeness, not advertisement, affordability, not buy now, pay later, a living wage, not obligatory career advancement, reparations, not financial literacy education? What would it look like for a Black person to flourish, basking in the fullness of humanity, entitled to us as image bearers of God? At McKinsey, you are not encouraged to look at the world anew. Imagination dies here. A world with Black flourishment is a world reimagined. Maybe that is why the Institute remains underwhelming. So a big shout out to this whistleblower of sorts. And I thank them for sharing this, and I wish them the best. But McKinsey represents a lot of what is wrong in these economic analyses. They in a lot of the politics being presented in today's media environment as Black and radical and progressive, it is actually coming from very white conservative spaces, and this is just another example of that. So just wanted to share that. Very, very impressed with that report, and appreciate again it being shared, and just wanted to discuss it briefly here. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.